Welcome everybody to Wednesday Hump Day. Well, at least it's Hump Day here in the US, of course.
It is
this
Hump
is
Day.
important.
Is it Hump Day or is it Standby Day? Brett, somehow we need to get ourselves on the screen.
There we are.
Here we go. How's your hump today?
You can never put me in control of the technology. I keep telling you that. I'm sorry.
You need somebody to give you directions.
That is a good idea. Somebody who could give us directions. Who do you think could do that?
Well, I have somebody in mind, but I don't respond well to female voices giving me directions, as my wife will tell you.
Well, let's do the introduction, shall we? Today it's been billed as the lead up to a wonderful guest and somebody I've spoken to before. And I will share with you a little later the surprise of how I got connected with our wonderful guest. May we introduce, please, a wonderful Karen Jacobsen, all the way from... Now, where are you right now, Karen?
I'm sorry, I'm not authorized to answer that question.
Is this going to be one of those episodes?
It is. Look, it may blow out, but this is where I am. Can you see?
Please.
I'm in an area called the Whitsundays in Northern Australia. It's right within a Great Barrier. You may have heard of the Great Barrier Reef. It's right where the Great Barrier Reef is. It's an area with 74 islands. And I'm here right now working with local businesses who have clearly been incredibly affected by the current situation. But my regular home is New York City.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like. Yeah, your accent is very New Yorkish.
Oh, yes, sorry, New York.
Absolutely. All that Rosetta Stone has worked.
How did you find to your current location?
Oh, do you mean, did I give myself directions?
I don't know. Did you? did you give the driver directions?
I've been doing my own driving. I'm very good at researching, and I actually have an excellent sense of direction, ironically or interestingly.
One might say it comes with the territory. So
something like that.
For those of you who've been watching Two Chaps, Many Cultures, we've built this up a little bit, and if you've done your research and kicked the tires on it, you may have already figured out what's going on here. So, Karen, it says here you're the GPS girl, and a lot of people know you because they've heard your voice before because you told them what to do.
That's right.
And I know you've told this story multiple times, but in a nutshell, how does one become the voice in millions, if not billions, of these gadgets and commandeering people around?
Okay. I am originally from Mackay in Australia, not far from here, actually. And I moved to New York, followed my life's dream. And when not long after I arrived there, an agent or a client was looking for a native Australian female voiceover artist living in the northeast of the United States. Now, I'd done a lot of voiceover work in my years in Australia before moving over there. And I read that description. I was like, that's a description of me. I went to the audition. I got the job on the spot. And they said, look, we need to record for 50 hours. It's going to be a long job. It'll take about 3 weeks. No more than 4 hours a day. We're going to record it in a town called Ithaca in upstate New York. So we need to bring you up there and put you in a hotel, but no more than 4 hours a day, so your voice doesn't sound fatigued or tired in any way. And so that's what happened. And we recorded, it was an intense job, 4 hours a day for 3 weeks. And at the end of it, I went back to my life. And sometime later, my voice popped up in devices, more and more devices around the world.
So in the beginning, you were not aware that it'll be the Siri voice, the direction voice. It was a service provider that supplies companies like many of them who use your voice. I'm not going to name
it was a
any
third-party company.
Right.
Yeah, I did that booking for a third-party company.
So let's play a scenario. You step into an elevator in New York City, and there's already a bunch of people in there, and you say something like, "Good day, everybody," or I wonder why I gathered you all here today. And in your voice, will people turn heads because they recognize you, or is that something that doesn't happen that often?
Oh, well, it has happened. I have to say that when someone discovers that it's my voice in their device or in some kind of scenario, they get very excited. They want to share with me all the wonderful trips we've taken together. They talk to me as if they know me. There's this familiarity. So what's really interesting is when this first started to happen, to have that kind of familiarity and rapport that's built so quickly and deeply is an unusual or special, I think, experience. And I knew there was something in it. I wasn't quite sure, and it took me a while to put together. But ultimately, I created a brand called the GPS Girl, an empowerment brand. And I made the connection between directions in the car, directions in life and business, and developed this principle of recalculating and these 5 directions for recalculating to be able to navigate change powerfully.
Which is well needed right now, of course.
Well, none of us could have imagined that truly everyone the globe over will be recalculating or needing to navigate such uncertain times together.
Absolutely, yeah. And a part of this week's theme is art across culture, as like to say in Australia, art across culture.
How do you say it?
Art. It's art, mate. It's culture.
Do you really need that over and over again, Christian?
Just making sure I hear it right.
Right.
But it is, and of course, there's a lot of your work too. We've seen you online. You're very active online and promoting the arts and the maintenance of that, even in these type of situations where obviously there's resources and everybody is tight on resources. But in just regular times, the arts struggle to get a voice, right? No matter what, whether it's singing, whether it's music, stage, whatever it is.
Yes.
So you're an advocate for that as well, right?
Well, I am. I mean, I wrote my first song when I was 7 years old. I've made, recorded 9 albums on my own label. I've performed as a singer, songwriter, piano player around the world, as well as my motivational presentations as a professional speaker. And it's a really interesting moment to see and to watch how certainly in some cultures, in many cultures, there's a big push to get the sport back. And there's a lot of money in sport, and there's a lot of gambling associated with sport. And the gambling and betting in sport is really not discussed in a very open way. But I'm not a sport watcher, and living in the United States for the last 20 years, it puzzled me. I'm like, well, people really love to watch people play games together and compete. Wow, they really get into that competition. And it wasn't until more recently that it was brought to my attention that it's not only about that. There's a whole betting, an undercurrent or a push around the wager, which I have to say my naivete, I was totally taken aback by that. So that's one big difference I see between the arts and sport is there is not, and not that it has to be one or the other at all. I think a healthy society has both, but there isn't that element. So when I'm looking at the importance of the arts, the fact that artistic expression and creativity is fundamental to our sense of self as an individual, let alone collectively experiencing that, whether as a performer, and that really magical exchange between a performer or a group of performers and an audience, or as an audience member listening or experiencing and taking in that performance. There isn't any betting going on. It's like a very separate piece. So it's essential, I think, to be having this conversation right now, given that there's such a clear shutdown for workers in the arts and in culture, and nowhere on the horizon do we see the timeline for having ongoing performances return. I mean, when you have most major orchestras in the world and performing and theatre groups unable to make a schedule that is relied upon, I mean, this is, we need new words to describe how dire that is, not only for arts workers but for the general public.
Yeah, it's a huge loss. And I see where you're going with this, and I recognize the outsider's perspective. Yes, you've lived in the U.S. long enough, and so have Brett and I, and looking at how certain parts of Anglo culture, but I would guess Australia is fairly similar in that regard. The scorekeeping, the keeping track of something, the stats collection, the win-lose proposition, all of this is so strongly embedded in sports that you don't have in the arts, right? The arts are ideally for enjoyment, enlightenment, brightening people's lives, and maybe have also a spiritual element to it. However, there's no win-lose proposition in this. This is harder to measure. This is harder to measure. And harder to juxtapose against each other, right? So it's a tough battle right now for those of us, or for those of you out there who make their living based on a creative process. So,
it is tricky. It's tricky. Sorry if I'm interrupting. It's tricky to measure. And one more outcome I will add is healing. The health and happiness factor from creativity is enormous, and we are, because it's difficult to measure, and there are more and more studies and certainly brain studies about the effect, for example, of music on the brain that have come forward. But it is, I think that has been part of what has been in the way, is just a very, it's a very challenging conversation in some ways, because I think a lot of arts workers have just felt so stunned by this shocking halt to their life's work. And some of the messages I've been hearing are, go and retrain for something else. I mean, that's not an option when something is your expertise and your calling, and you believe so fully in the purpose and the mission of what you're doing, and see the results of that from the work that you deliver. Absolutely.
Well, speaking of results, I don't want to break, because this was a good segue. I mean, Christian brought in the spiritual part of it. It brought in, I mean, as a young kid in Australia, I used to sit on Christmas Eve, watch carols by candlelight, right? This is just what I find, and I brought up this, I just kind of grabbed this random image, right? So we've got these kids, this was me, when I was a kid, who sat in parks. We gathered in parks because obviously it's not winter in Australia. We sat in parks and we shared this experience, or we watched it on live TV, right? And of course, you have performed, and if you would allow me, I've actually got a little bit of a sample because Karen has performed at this very event, which when I saw this just brought me back to, we're talking about the importance of art and what it takes you to, how it embeds you. I think it's a wonderful. I just want to play this small snippet. So it's just a small sampling of, if you follow Karen on her on her many platforms, just another little kind of side gig, you know, performer in front of thousands and thousands, singer of national anthems in stadiums across the world, you know. So it's just you know, you can take the art and take your talent, which you've got the wonderful voice for in terms of the delivering it in the devices around the world. But a lot of people in the arts can have a wide, varied set of talents and cross many cultures. And I'm sure you've done that, and you've certainly done it for me. I mean, looking at that recreates, well, that kind of thing recreates for me something that was very special to me growing up. Right.
Yeah.
And so, it just brings the importance of how if you bring your children up with the arts, and you know, having arts involved in a school curriculum, having it be a part of the everyday vernacular, you know, on top of the sport, as you say, and all that kind of stuff, is very important. So that's the kind of effect it had on me personally. I'm sure it's had on you growing up in Australia, you know.
Thank you for sharing that, Brett. That was really a peak moment for me, having had that same upbringing of the Carols by Candlelight experience. And just for people in other parts of the world who may not share that December, you know, Christmas holiday time, outdoor hot summer Carols by Candlelight experience, it's my how it was for me. It wasn't like a religious event, even though Australian has you know, a lot of celebration around Christmas. To me it's a connection event, and I love music and I love Christmas and holiday songs, and it's been a little bit of a challenge. I produced and recorded and released a Christmas holiday album several years ago, and it did not quite translate. I became really aware how very different it is in America, because there are so many different faiths, and it's, you know, Thanksgiving is the day of the year where everybody stops and everybody does everything together, because there are no different religious affiliations. But having a Christmas album or a holiday album was suddenly extremely separating and religious, which puts you
in a box as a performer, right? You're automatically labeled as a faith-related performer, not so much as a performer that brings together everyone.
Right, and that's who I am as a human being and a person. I'm interested in connection. I'm committed to connecting people to themselves, to their dreams, to each other, to have uplifting, higher vibration, you know, experiences, and create an amazing life. So for me, that there was just, and even just listening to that orchestra playing, I could breathe in a more easy way. You know, the power of music, the connection power. And I think it's also interesting to talk specifically about music and about singing, is how every human being most human beings are born with a voice, an operating voice, and can sing. Even if they may judge themselves about that singing and think they are not good at it, or however they've, you know, whatever they've experienced as a child that has led them to have certain opinions and beliefs and judgments for themselves about that voice. But we all have the ability, most of us have the ability to express that voice, whether it's in tune or not. And that act alone is incredibly healing, let alone that expression and singing in a group, which it's so very difficult to even fathom that is such a way of spreading this virus right now, because it's in the way of us doing something that is so very natural and connecting and healing.
Yeah, I'm glad you know Ben Zander, the
yes,
right. He talks in his TED talk about people thinking they're tone deaf. He
Right.
says nobody is tone deaf, because he says you can't be tone deaf if you answer the phone and your mother's on the phone. Not only do you know it's your mother, you know what mood she's in. You
That's
couldn't
right.
do that if you were tone deaf. You can't
Right.
change the gears in your stick shift car, or let's call it manual in our Australian vernacular, or whatever it is. You can't change the gears unless you hear where the engine is at a certain point. So tone deafness is a fallacy. So he says that everybody's got a voice, everybody's got this ability to express themselves in that way.
Right. Right.
And it reminds us that communication is more than the words. Communication consists of, yes, the words we utter or that we write, the tone of voice, our pitch, our speed, the volume, the timbre, whatever tonality of voice we're using, and the body language with which we utter these words or sing them or shout them or whisper them. So all of that plays into the message making, right? And also, I don't want to forget this, because you watched that clip earlier and you saw that picture, which Brett said it was randomly picked, but let's be honest, that was Brett when he had still hair when he was 3.5 years old. So 5 months from now, it'll be Christmas week. You already will have missed it. So this is your memo. Plan ahead, because there's these gifts that you planned on getting for your loved ones. This is your call 5 months from now, right? So also, I would like to point something out that you kind of mentioned in passing earlier, Karen, that you had recorded several CDs and wrote songs when you were a preteen. So you had found your voice and your singing as your outlet for I don't want to say for your creativity or your messaging. I don't know you that well, but this was your outlet. This was your process, right? So
yeah, my expression.
The brand GPS Girl came upon you because of that contract and because of that very successful work that you did, but you had your voice long before that, didn't you?
I did. And from a very young age, at the age of 7, I was sitting in our family living room, and on the television came the most important and influential person in the entire world, Olivia Newton-John.
Our queen.
Yes.
Right. And when I saw her, my life changed. She had an incredible impact on me. I knew that I wanted to become a professional singer and move to America. And I wasn't sure how I was going to do that, but it was so clear to me. And I could see that there was possibility. Like, here was a blonde Australian singer, female singer, who had gone to America. Everybody loved her, and I wanted to be just like her. So I had I suppose this example on this inspiration of a real live human being who was doing what I wanted to do, and that guided me for many years toward that destination, and I accomplished it. I became a professional singer. I moved to America. And this is being a songwriter. I've written songs. I write songs weekly. I'm a professional songwriter, singer and performer. The piano is my chosen office. And in fact, I have just recently written and previewed a musical memoir. My show is called 𝙏𝙬𝙤, which is my hometown, to Manhattan. And I've given a couple of preview performances and will be premiering that when the times allow. So that shares my story through the songs I've written from the age of 7 all the way through to the present day.
That's fantastic.
So your artistic process, your voice, your way of expression has allowed you to transition between cultures. Would that be fair to say?
Absolutely. And I believe music is the international language. It's another language. But not only is it the international language, another way of saying that, I mean, it's a language that every human being receives and understands on a plane or on a level that defies description. It's innate. You know, it's perhaps it's primal, but it's of the ancients. But the fact that we can all we hear, we connect through the ether, through that space, and it's intimate. I think artistic expression on the whole can be a vulnerable space. I think these are some of the reasons there's a challenge with its importance in society, because I do think it can be a little uncomfortable at times, right? Because music does it can have us share and connect in an intimate and vulnerable way, whether that's from the performer or the audience member listening and sharing in it. And that's less likely in other modalities, but in the arts, it's common.
Right. And it's not happening. I don't know if I'm using the right words, but these are the words that come up for me. It's not cerebral. We're not consciously connecting. It's happening on a subconscious vibrational level. And this sounds woo-woo maybe to some of you, but sound is vibration, right? Yes, it is. Is air molecules vibrating at a certain frequency, and if we're in sync, if the wavelengths are aligned, then there's connection, and that's what music can do. And that's right. And that's why it's probably why the arts are so dangerous to those in power, because it bypasses their linear world and enters us at levels that are beyond human control.
You know, I love the way you just said that. That was so beautifully expressed, and I think that is
we record it?
I really hope so, because that, I mean, I want to go back and have that description, Christian. It was brilliant. It is beyond human description and control, and I think that can be very frightening to those who are looking for specific and measurable. And I cannot see any other way for humanity than the absolute necessity of care, kindness, truly connection. How else do we, as quite separate peoples and cultures and countries, accomplish what needs to be accomplished around this pandemic crisis, around the crisis with the planet and nature? We simply have to get it together.
We do.
Yeah. I think I just pulled a book up when you were talking about that, and I agree with you about what Christian said. That's going to be a sound clip, folks.
Please, can you send that sound clip to me?
I'm going to do it. That was profound, because I had the same goosebumps when he said it. I know it was great. But this is a book. I don't know whether you've read this, Karen. This is Sand Talk by one of our countrymen, but our original countrymen, right? The very original inhabitants. And we're talking about arts in terms of the high arts, and we call them the high arts, I guess, in terms of music and that. But this part of this book talks about the importance of storytelling through a musical sense, because this is about how Indigenous thinking can save the world. That's the byline of this, right? And he talks about going back to what you were just saying then, Karen, is going back to this relationship with the land, that we know and celebrate the wonderful Aboriginal culture that was the original inhabitants of our land. And that's what he talks about. He says that not being regressive, but looking forward through the lens of what can Indigenous cultures show us in terms of the care of the land and its integration with it and our relationship with it. So that's why I picked up that book when in the middle of that, because I thought this is exactly what...
Hold it up again, because people need to see that, and I need to see that too. Sand Talk, and we'll post a link with the author's name in the comments. It's going to be on my Amazon wish list next. Thank you for sharing.
It's a wonderful book, and I'm kind of not all the way through it. But it does, because it's kind of connected to home, right? And it is. But I will read a little, because this is important. He says, in acknowledging this is he talks about the echidna and the echidna brain. It's a special thing to it, but he says, I am paying respects to the sentient totemic entities all over Australia, where these echidnas follow the song lines of their creation. Maps of story carrying a knowledge along the lines of energy that manifests as law in the mind and the land as one. These are kind of things that talk about how, you know, like the communication, there's no written language for Aboriginal culture, right? All of it was through music, dance, and oral communication. It was just fantastic. And so he talks about that and the importance of that, and using, like you just said, Christian, that bypasses the power, right? Mm. There's not a lot, I think you'll agree, Karen, there's not a lot of hierarchy in Aboriginal cultures. You know, there's certainly councils.
When you say it bypasses the power, like we know, like, we've all been in a room where a truth is spoken, or there is a moment experiencing, I'm going to say maybe a show, like a Broadway show, a musical, or a live musical performance, where there is a feeling that is almost indescribable, a feeling of such pure connection that you're nodding, and you know, I'm searching for the words, because that's the power and the magic and also the healing properties that I'm speaking about from the arts, the potential there. I mean, and we know it with our being. Yeah. And it is so elevating. And to my mind, essential for the healthiest, happiest society we can create.
You said earlier, Karen, that all of us are born with a voice, and as kids, we sing like nobody's listening, and it doesn't matter, and we're not tone deaf. And I've heard this reference made before, and I'm stealing it shamelessly, and I cannot even attribute it to the source because I forgot it. But it's as children, we are innocent, and we do that. We do that with, dare I say, divine intuition, right? We channel something, yes. And it gets beaten out of us by becoming an adult, or on the path of being in adulthood through our systems that we've created for ourselves, no matter which culture we're in. As an adults, I don't want to say we lose that innocence. However, we put that in a box and put it somewhere under a cupboard and don't look at it, because adulthood, we learn, requires other skills, and that innocent inhibition isn't serving us because society tells us it doesn't work or it doesn't serve us well. And going
comfortable.
Yeah, or it makes us uncomfortable, right? So it's sing like nobody's listening, people. Allow your vibrations to exit your brain. You said something. Yeah, go ahead, Karen.
As you say that, it points again to that intimacy and vulnerability, and that can be uncomfortable for us, especially if we're judged by others for it, and that can play a part potentially in us shutting down our expression.
And that's the work that we do, right? We what does Brett say? He inspires. What do you say? Inspire greatness in others, or?
And a quote, but he says his only job on the face of the planet, which he didn't discover until he was 45 as a conductor, was to inspire possibility in others.
Right.
As a conductor, he doesn't make a sound. He just basically is the person on the CD, but none of his power, all of his power is dependent on what he can inspire other people to find in themselves.
Absolutely awesome.
It's absolutely, I mean, I could watch that guy. There are hundreds of YouTube videos. I can bask in the glow of that kind of message all day long. And it's and I forget it. You know, I'm constrained by my upbringing and the culture I was brought up in not to perform. I'm a performer too, right? I've had that chance to do it. I've experienced those times as a performer, but it's still, there's sometimes in the back of your mind, is this who's going to say something about this, right? It's a constant thing, right? But it's, you know, we got to work through it, and that's part of Karen's message, of course. Yeah.
I want to don't let that opportunity pass, because you said that, Karen, about how we need to get our act together as humanity.
Yeah.
I've shared this in many other outlets. I'll say it again because it's a timeless message, I think. If you haven't watched the movie, people, if you haven't watched the movie The Arrival, or I think it's only Arrival without the movie Arrival, Jeremy Renner and Amy Adams in lead roles. It's a science fiction movie on the surface. It is, in fact, a story about how we as humanity have what we need to get our act together. We simply have forgotten how to. And the movie is almost like a mirror holding that up into our face, and this is how we do it. So if you haven't watched it yet, I'm sure it's on one of these streaming services out there, a movie called Arrival. Go get it.
Excellent.
Well, any final thoughts, Karen? I mean, I know we could do this all day. I mean, we
sure could. We sure could.
So, you've just appeared on one of our major television channels. And, they only give you a short amount of time. And of course, now you're on the peak of the hill, being featured on the Two Chaps Many Cultures.
That's right. That's right. I think what I'd like to share, certainly at this moment in time, even though these episodes are evergreen, I mean, we record this at a moment in time where we have, many of us have had varying levels of shock living through lockdown. As my husband said at one point, the whole world has been put in an ashram that they did not sign up for. We have many people are experiencing tremendous health challenges, heartbreaking loss of loved ones, of their work economically. On every level, we are being challenged. And I think I'm just reminded how much trauma humans are experiencing right now with the unthinkable level of uncertainty of what is next. And there will be, we aren't going back to where we were. So getting back to normal is, it's just not a logical way to be thinking. But I think some of us use that terminology and try and give ourselves some comfort that there is such a thing. We are headed somewhere else. We don't know where that's going to be. But I just really want to share with your viewers and listeners that it is totally normal to be having all kinds of reactions right now, and to really invite you to use extreme self-care, to be very gentle with yourself, to take on some just really small but practical, regular practices, so that you are taking much better care of yourself, because we are all going through a lot. This shift is, this part of evolution, we are in a major, major shift. And it's going to take every tool we have. So getting adequate rest and hydrating and, just taking care of those basics. I just think there is it's essential right now. That back to basics message, I'm not hearing it a lot, but I think that's part of the foundation of what has us as individuals be able to cope, and then be able to express ourselves and with care for other human beings, if we are nurturing ourselves and less frightened.
That was wonderful.
Wonderful. Well, it's certainly not the end of the journey, but it is the end of the destination. And I'm going to let you sign off, Karen.
Oh, excellent. With one more thing, which is that given our topic is the arts, I just spoke about health, but yes, the health of the arts, and use the beauty of music and movement to nurture yourself at this time, and listen to music that makes you feel great. And use that daily. Sing along loudly to it, as just totally go for it. Have your own Celine Dion moment. All right, and I am going to. I'm just thrilled to have been with you both, and would like to leave this last word, which is, you have reached your destination.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.